Being a chartered manager means that you are a specialist in that area, and it means you've got all the skills to do the job to the best of its ability.
You are seen as a leader, a true leader who has credentials behind the great work you've already been doing.
It's enhanced my understanding, it's enhanced my skill set, it's improved my mindset.
It makes all the difference.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar regarding the evolving apprenticeship landscape. As an introduction, I am Allison, the Director of Awarding Body at the Chartered Management Institute. So first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your day. I know everybody is very busy, but I really appreciate the commitment to learn more about what is happening in the world of apprenticeship provision and the role that CMI will play with our partners and supporting the changes that we are seeing in this particular landscape. So it would be really helpful if, as you are joining, if you could just say who you are and where you are joining from in the chat. It's always lovely to find out where people are joining from, and it's always great to get connections when we do these activities. So please feel free to add comments. We expect this session to last approximately 30 minutes. We are hoping for time at the end of the session to have some question and answers, but we have had some pre-submitted questions also. So what I will aim to do is also try and weave in some of the answers to the questions that have already been submitted throughout the presentation. As we've already explained, the copies of this recording and also the slides and any follow-up questions will be shared after this event. So we really do want you to be engaged and get as much from this session as possible, because we value your feedback and your support with what we are doing at CMI. So as a quick overview, there's a welcome from obviously myself. There's only me who is presenting today, but we envisage that we will be doing more of these webinars in the future. So again, one of the questions we have at the end is really what information and what content would you like from us for any future webinars? We're going to have a quick look at some of the changes within the apprenticeship world in terms of what the DFE principles are, some changes in roles and responsibilities, some existing opportunities that we also have and you may not be aware of at CMI, but then future opportunities of what we're trying to do to meet our partners' needs and expectations and what support we can offer. So as I say, just as a reminder at the bottom there, if there are any questions, please feel free to add them to the comments. If we don't get time to cover them today, we will be doing a follow-up that will hopefully answer some of the questions. I think it's fair to say that as things are changing, we may not have all of the answers, but we will absolutely aim to provide as much information as possible. Okay, so in terms of some of the changes and challenges we are facing within the apprenticeship provision, it's useful just to have a small overview around the drivers for change. So the Department for Education introduced some principles and they were aimed to streamline and simplify the apprenticeship assessments that are currently being done. There were a range of consultations to give feedback, and it was very positive to hear that the value of independence within that assessment role is still being retained. So that's an element that CMI absolutely value. We know that that external assessment of learners at the end of their training also gives really clear feedback in terms of how they've performed and where their strengths and development areas are. So that will be retained moving forward. Just as a quick overview then in terms of what the Department for Education are aiming to do, When assessment plans have previously been developed under IFATE, there was a lot of differences within each individual assessment plan within each sector. Some assessment plans had mandated qualifications, some didn't. The range of assessment methodologies really varied. And so one of the things that is now being introduced with the new principles is really looking at how you can remove any unnecessary duplication. So an example would be if a previous assessment plan did have a mandated qualification, but there are also elements of the endpoint assessment that repeated some of that, either knowledge evidence or experience, that would be removed. So it would simplify the learner only having to do something once and evidence it once. It's looking at trying to have consistency and standardization. So again, as each assessment plan was developed, there wasn't really any standardization. And so the new assessment plan provision will look at how it can be simplified, but also maintain the quality of provision, have that employer confidence to make sure that the standards are still appropriate for learners, and also have the ability to innovate and be flexible with the assessment design. And I'll go through some of those changes a bit later on. So in terms of the changes in roles and responsibilities, some of the new terminology, so in the future there will be assessment organisations, and they would previously be an endpoint assessment organisation, which CMI is one of. We also then have on-programme assessment, potentially by training providers, that will then be looking at the role of training providers and if they are able to offer any of that assessment on programme. And that really, for anybody who's worked in education for long enough, will go back to the old way of assessing apprenticeship provision, where it is continual assessment and looking at the evidence that learners are generating as part of their workplace role. One of the changes is around the employers being able to validate behaviours. So one part of the consultation was really looking at who is best placed to assess or validate behaviours of the apprentice. And the discussion looked at, because the employer obviously has that contact time with the learner, is able to see how they work in their employment environment, that it may be best placed to sit with the employers, but we still don't really have a vision of how that will work and who will be accountable for those assessments or validations. So there are still some answers that we don't have. And then finally, we have Skills England that is now obviously overtaken IFATE. And really, as I was developing the slides, literally on a weekly basis, we were adding changes to some of the government policy changes. So Skills England will now move from DFE under DWP. But Jackie Smith will still have a role within DFE and DWP. So again, as we have more information, we are happy to share what some of those changes will look like. Okay, so again, some of the changes that we have found at CMI is around the removal of funding for learners over the age of 22 at level 7. So that funding will stop at the end of December. So from January 2026, learners need to be registered on programme at level 7 in order to then be able to undertake that existing senior leadership apprenticeship provision. And one of the questions that was actually submitted in advance of this session was really looking at what the options are for mature learners or any learners that are over 22, because usually you would find that people over 22 are the ones in senior leadership roles with that management experience. So again, I will cover that later on in the session, but it's just something to be aware of, that the removal of funding at level 7 will end in December, and so the cohorts need to be registered prior to that date. We have some changes around the move from level 6 chartered manager degree apprenticeship to level 6 leadership management professional, which is an integrated degree. So again, for those of you who offer this as a degree apprenticeship, there are changes. We were expecting that the CMDA would cease over the summer period, but there is a delay to this. And because of some of the policy changes and obviously Skills England moving under DWP, we haven't got any confirmation around dates for the change in apprenticeship provision at this particular level. We then have Ofqual's regulatory framework for apprenticeship assessment. So that again is also under a lot of change. So one of the things that CMI are actively doing is working with Ofqual, engaging with the Federation of Awarding Bodies, completing consultation work. So one consultation has been completed around the policy for how apprenticeships will be assessed in the future. And we're then looking to be involved in the technical elements of this later on this year. So one of the things to bear in mind is obviously when we look at the quality of provision and the regulation that sits alongside apprenticeship provision, CMI are absolutely supporting the regulated assessment and making sure that the quality of provision is still there for the learners, even when assessment plans are simplified and streamlined. CMI is actively lobbying and providing research activities around the value of level 6 apprenticeships. We did this for level 7. So one of the things we wanted to demonstrate is for individuals or organisations that had completed these qualifications and these apprenticeships, the actual real benefit for either the individual or the organisation. And we continue to do that around our level 6 provision. And it's really important evidence to show the impact. If somebody achieves this learning, how do they apply that in the workplace? What is the impact for that organisation? And we have some fantastic case studies around the NHS and the management within the NHS in terms of what they have done either around patient care or saving specific amounts of money because of working practices. So again, we are very keen to get that evidence base and to share that to show the impact of what this training will do. Lastly on this slide is just around Ofsted inspection. So it's a time of change. So even with all of the above change I've just gone through, we then have Ofsted that have changed their inspection framework and how they complete the inspections. We just wanted to raise that as well, because obviously there may be links and a possible impact if there is poor grades achieved within that Ofsted framework. And that could be an impact for the organisation and for the learners who are undertaking that provision. Okay, so we've got a little bit of background in terms of some of the challenges and the changes. What I really wanted to cover today is some existing opportunities that not everybody may be aware of. So I've already mentioned the level 7 senior leadership apprenticeship. There is a deadline of the end of December. We are seeing lots of organisations that have successfully used this particular standard, encouraging and registering learners before December. So again, that's something that we would support any providers doing. Exactly the same with registering on the CMDA, because until the standard is given an end date, there are still opportunities for learners to register on that. And we have many higher education providers that offer this and have some fantastic results, and also case studies around how this is impacting businesses and the growth of different organisations. One of the things, and we absolutely want feedback from today, please, is around any support that you feel you may need if you are considering delivering that level 6 leadership and management professional. So is there anything that CMI can do to help you with some of those activities? And we also have a development of different qualifications that is really listening to the feedback from our providers, that we are looking at shorter, smaller courses, but also looking at sustainability and how that can be used to improve management and leadership skills within the workplace. Again, moving on to new opportunities, we are very excited to announce we can offer, as an endpoint assessment organisation, the Level 6 Improvement Leader Standard from this month. So in October this year, we have the ability to register learners and have learners on the Level 6 Improvement Leader Standard. And it's really important to understand why this is a good choice for learners too. So we are more than happy to provide further information after this presentation. Excuse me. We are approved to offer different levels within Improvement Leader, but Level 6 is the priority because of what is happening with some of the Level 6 provision right now in higher education. For this particular standard, there is no degree embedded in the Improvement Leader. So you then have no involvement from the Office for Students. So you have more flexibility in terms of what can be offered and how that delivery can take place. So just to build on that standard in terms of how that can be used to offer a progression route for learners, what we wanted to do is really consider some of the changes and what could be offered as alternative provision. So as I've already discussed, the Level 7 Senior Leader Standard will end in terms of the funding at the end of December. We have partners that are looking to deliver the Level 6 Improvement Leader Standard to draw out core similarities. So one of the things that CMI has actually done is map the content, so the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours of what we've had previously in Senior Leader Standard and look at how that fits with the content of Improvement Leader Standard. The Improvement Leader can be levy funded as a Level 6 apprenticeship standard, so that is still able to draw down the funding. And within the delivery and creation of how that Level 6 is provided, higher education institutions have the opportunity to create that delivery programme, and that can then have a pathway to a Level 7 master's degree. So again, one of the things that we have been doing when we talk to our partners is look at how the provision at Level 6 can provide sufficient credits as part of a postgraduate diploma, and then potentially use the additional credits at Level 7, so have that pathway to achieve the master's degree. And within that Level 7 provision, you can then have chartered manager embedded into that learning. So it's looking at the value added outcome for the learners. One of the things that we have discussed, and this is again with the Department for Education, is the ability for either individuals or organisations, so employers, to help support paying for that top up Level 7. So it's looking at that pathway from achieving a Level 6, achieving a postgraduate diploma, and then looking at how a top up of Level 7 can be used within the organisation, but then be funded by the individual or the employer. And again, if that's something that you would like further information on, there will be a follow-up email after this presentation. Okay, in terms of some tailored support requirements, one of the things, as I've already mentioned regarding some of the changes, if we have training providers that would like to undertake some of the assessment, and this really is dependent on what the new assessment plans look like. These are still under development, and depending on the type of assessment methodologies used, there may be one assessment methodology that a training provider could undertake, But it's important to understand that as this is regulated, the training provider would have to demonstrate centre assessment standard scrutiny, and that's something we have to do with our regulator Ofqual. So again, it's making sure the support is there to help anybody who wants to do any of the assessments that is able to do that under the new assessment plans. And we don't know what they will be like at this stage. We've seen draft versions that were 1 to 2 pages long. We think now that it will be more like 3 to 4 pages long in terms of content for the assessment plan. So there are lots of things that potentially CMI can help support you with. But as a training provider, there are requirements, and it's also looking at the right delivery staff and assessment staff with the right qualifications and competence to be able to undertake those assessments as well. Some of the durations of the assessments may also change. So previously we had requirements where learners on some programs had to be on program for a minimum of 12 months. There may be some flexibility, and there may be that flexibility of learning on program as well. So it may not be that you have to wait until the end of the duration of that apprenticeship training to have the assessment. There may be elements that can be taken on program as they are achieved. So again, lots of things that potentially we can support with. But as the assessment plans are still being developed, we are still waiting for some answers in terms of what each standard would look like. And I think the other thing just to mention regarding employer engagement, it's really important that we have that clarity with employers around expectations of what evidence they would need to gather and assess and have available for either Skills England and Ofqual to show that individuals have achieved the full amount of training required in order to be successful and complete that apprenticeship. Okay, so we are now on to the final slide. I'm hopeful that we can get some live questions, but there will be an opportunity for us to capture the questions that you have put in the comments. One of the things that we would like to do is for any future webinars, please really give us some feedback. We know there are lots of changes. I think having had the Labour Party conference this week, we've had terminology around gold standard apprenticeship provision. We've got the announcement of £800 million that potentially will go to FE, but also will include apprenticeship provision. And there's also a message that's coming through around the need to have more support between levels 4 and 5 and where that pathway is into higher education. The target of 50% of individuals going into higher education has been scrapped, but we also have the expectation around individuals that need to be in education, employment or training, and what support is necessary for those. So again, there's lots of policy decisions and announcements that we're trying to take on board and make sure that we have the right services for our partners. So from today, I'll just finish off this slide and then I will see if I can take any questions. So the ask really for a follow-up from this is any particular subjects or any topics that you would like to have in future. If there is any particular support needs that you've identified through this session today, so if I've mentioned something where you think that will be really valuable for you, again, we have dedicated relationship managers and engagement managers within CMI who are happy to offer support. So it's trying to capture that information as well. There is a huge amount of written information and guidance that is available. Some of them we will place in the follow-up email after this event. But again, if there's specific things that you want us to give you more information and details, we'll happily do that. And then any other support you feel will be valuable during this period of change. We are here as a partnership to help you navigate the change in terms of policy provision, funding, and what the apprenticeship landscape will actually look like in terms of assessments. But it'd be really valuable to get your feedback, if not today, after this event, and then we can make sure that future provision will help support you in any activities that you have, and help share the information in a timely manner. Because, as I said at the start of the presentation, some of the slides that were written 3 or 4 weeks ago were then changed because of changes to DFE and Skills England moving to DWP. So it's one of those evolving landscapes that will continue to change, and it's really important that we have that information for you and help guide you wherever we can. Okay, so we have just a few minutes before we end. I'm going to try and access the comments to look. I think there's quite a few questions that will be coming through, which is absolutely understandable. There are a few that I will try and answer, and thank you for putting who you are and where you're from as well. That's really helpful. There's a question here about HTQs. So CMI do have HTQs. Obviously, there's been challenges that we have raised with DFE around promotion of HTQs. And so higher technical qualifications, apologies for anybody who is not in the world of HTQs. There are questions around the understanding of what these mean, who can use them, what funding is available, and there is funding available. So again, we can follow that up. But we do believe that there is a missed opportunity for the understanding of HTQs. They were developed to try and bridge that gap at level 4 and level 5. The expectation that you have T levels at level 3, and then you had that progression route into higher education. We don't think the numbers are anywhere near where they should be. And so again, it's something that we raise with DFE around the understanding and the promotion to make sure people know that that is an avenue for them. Okay, I am just scrolling through some of the other questions. There's a question about where to apply for apprenticeship provision. So that potentially may be for learners. So one of the things that we can do on our follow-up mail is capture where apprenticeship provision is actually advertised. So in terms of the government website, they show all of the different apprenticeship places available. You can filter that within sector, level, location. So if you're in a particular area, you can say that you only want to travel within 60 miles of where you live, etc. So it's a very useful resource in order to apply. So again, we'll provide that information, but if there's any further information that you want specifically, and it's not just for learners, then we can provide that and follow that up as well. Okay, so there's another question around HTQs, so we will follow that up with HTQs. More information required on assessment plans where they're released equally for the level 3s as well. So again, there have been delays. Some of the apprenticeship provision that we thought, so for example, around level 2 and the administration assistant, we thought that would have had the funding bands confirmed and the approval that has gone through, and that is still delayed. So there are definite things that we had expected dates, and they have been delayed due to lots of changes, either with Skills England or policy decisions. We do feel that because of some of the government policy announcements, especially the one around FE and trying to get 16 to 19s in education, employment or training, we do feel that at level 3 there will be a focus on trying to address that, and that may be around that apprenticeship provision. It may be at some of the other qualifications or opportunities available to them. So I'm very conscious of time. I think we have just under a minute before we finish. I can see lots of really valuable comments in the chat, so really appreciate anybody who has fed back. If there are any questions that you still want to add, please do. Thank you so much for attending this session. We will happily share lots more information. CMI is committed to supporting our partners and having that strong relationship. And we know in times of change that more communication and understanding your needs are really, really vital. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in the future, and we will follow up with further details straight after this session. Have a good afternoon.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.